Hello and welcome to Making Creativity Pay, the podcast where we talk to people in creative industries about how they promote and market their work. I'm Dan Barnett, and on this episode we'll be speaking to Zena and Michelle, founders of the Camden Fringe. We'll also be talking about their Camden Fringe podcast, which is a great resource where they speak to performers and others in the industry about all areas from marketing, PR, as well as tips on writing a show. We talk about how the Camden Fringe came about, how it differs to the Edinburgh Fringe, and have loads of advice for anyone looking to put a show on at the festival. We started out by talking about how the Camden Fringe got started.
Hello, I'm Zena, one of the Camden Fringe founders, and we've been both running it together now for 17 years. And we started it off because we were running a venue in Camden at the time, and it seemed like a good way of filling the venue up during August when it was quite hard to get bookings. Now we've got 300 events on for this year, which is about as big as we ever wanted to be, unless we grow some extra hands and brains.
Hello, I'm Michelle. I'm the other half of the Camden Fringe, and the Camden Fringe will be running this year from the 31st of July to the 27th of August 2023.
I was looking on the site this morning. It's 315 events now, so I think it's still growing, I guess.
I think 3 of those listed might have been cancelled, but it is still, we have still registered, I think, 5 more shows in the last 24 hours. So people are leaving it till the last minute.
There's a few more sort of fiddling around, but we're sort of almost at the top of that it's going to be.
Do you almost see it kind of expanding beyond Camden, or I mean, is it enough to kind of manage as it is without taking over, the whole of North London or whatever?
I mean, we have already slightly pushed the boundaries of the borough of Camden. So we have a couple of venues that are in Islington. We have a couple of venues that are in the West End, but I think technically they are within the borough of Camden. And yes, we have the Canal Cafe, which is out towards the west. But yeah, we don't really want it to be too much bigger. We've always said that the venue should stay close to Camden and be within easy access of Camden town. So be that by bus or canal boat.
Within that region, do you get much support from Camden Council or other arts organisations?
No, we're pretty freewheeling when it comes to the financing and the support.
Camden Council engaged with us maybe about 15 years ago for a short while, and then that person left the council, and then after that they weren't really interested. I think councils have just been cut to the bone, haven't they? So there's perhaps nobody there that's left that's allowed to want to do anything interesting.
So with 300 plus events, how do you go about promoting that? I know you use Twitter an awful lot. How have you seen Twitter change in the last few months? It's kind of, to some extent, gone down the toilet, in my opinion. I don't know whether you've seen the same.
Yeah, I suspect Twitter won't be around next year when we come to start promoting the Fringe, which is a real shame because that's been the platform that historically we've been able to use. Because with so many shows, it's where you can really bombard people with an individual tweet about each show, because with 300 shows, that's a lot of tweets, and we tend to tweet about them more than once, maybe 2 or 3 times. But you can't do that on Instagram or Facebook because that would just be too much information. But yeah, I think Twitter really has had its day. Certainly, we ask everybody who applies for their social media handles, and Twitter always used to be kind of one of the big ones, but now, I think 50% of the acts have Twitter, 50% have abandoned them. And it's definitely less engagement with our tweets this year than we have had in previous years.
Where do you see the Camden Fringe fitting in with the wider show calendar? I know some people are kind of using it as a kind of work in progress and then going to Edinburgh. Some are doing it instead. Do you kind of see, it kind of fits, it kind of covers multiple areas, really?
Yeah, obviously we happen at the same time as Edinburgh, which was deliberate because that was when London was quiet and venues needed the shows to fill, because although lots of performing people go up to Edinburgh, lots of people don't. And, the population of London doesn't just disappear in the summer because Edinburgh's on. There's still plenty of people around. So, yeah, people can use it as a way of doing a bit of performing in London and then going up to Edinburgh. Or, we really like to think of ourselves as a nice sort of friendly, easy, less pressure option for people who want to put on a show but aren't quite feeling up for doing Edinburgh yet, and they can come and try it out this summer with us, make some mistakes, learn a few things, and then next year take that on to go to do Edinburgh. Or some people just aren't interested in going to Edinburgh at all.
Are you seeing more of that over time, that people are saying, I want to do, say, 4 or 5 shows at the Camden Fringe, instead of maybe where in the past they'd just do 1 or 2 nights? So they're almost kind of doing an extended run.
I don't think that's changed. What do you think, Zena?
No, I was going to say, yeah, I don't think that's changed. There's always a mix of things. I think definitely because Edinburgh has got more and more expensive over the years, I think people are looking for other options more and more. So they might do a few days in Camden, a few days in Brighton, Buxton, and they're looking, and also over the last sort of 10, 15 years, so many festivals have popped up all over the UK. You could do like a little tour of festivals, possibly culminating in a very short run in Edinburgh, or not bothering to go there at all.
And with the other festivals, do you have much interaction with them? Is there kind of a collegiate atmosphere, or are they very much separate?
We do have a little bit of interaction with the other festivals. Here and there, there's the thing called the World Fringe Network. So with that, there's, we have a WhatsApp group of fringes around the world, of all the fringe managers sort of asking advice about various things. Like, for example, when COVID happened and there was this question of, what we're going to do about going online, there was a lot of communication then about different ways that people were trying to sort of get around it and work out how to put on an alternative thing. So there is a lot of chat, and I don't think anyone feels like they're in competition with each other in any way.
No, this week we also had World Fringe Day on Tuesday the 11th, which was a big celebration of all the fringes across the world. And we were all kind of supporting each other and promoting each other. And it's, it's quite nice, really. Nice to be in a little gang.
How have you seen the Camden Fringe change? Obviously, it's kind of grown over years. How are your thoughts? We'll talk mainly about Camden Fringe, but, obviously the Edinburgh Fringe is this big beast that hangs over pretty much most of the art scene for August and beyond. How do you see things going over the next few years? Do you think there will be a tipping point, or will it just be a slow decline for the likes of Edinburgh?
It's so difficult to say, because I first went to Edinburgh in the early 90s. I was very, very young. And actually, I was genuinely quite young. And even then, people were like, oh, there's too many posters, there's too much competition. That it was felt like there's too many big venues, there's too many big names doing it. And that's still the same complaints that are going on now. I think, obviously, the big thing that's changed in the last couple of years is the accommodation issue, where there really just is a lack of decently priced places for people to stay in the city. But I think it's just that thing which is so big and successful that people are always going to moan about it. But that's part of the fun of doing it, probably, is having a right good moan about how it's all changed and it wasn't as good as it used to be. But that's been going on for 70 years.
I always bob up right at the end, and I just absolutely love it and will always love it, even though it's really expensive, and all the food outlets around the city, charge a double whatever for August, but it's still a brilliant place to be.
I think Edinburgh, I don't think it's going to implode. I think hopefully they'll just make improvements every year. I mean, last year everyone was so negative about it. I was like, next year's going to be our year for the Camden Fringe. Everyone's going to come and do Camden. And then slowly, as the months go on, you see everyone, I'm going to Edinburgh for these dates. And you're like, yeah. But everyone goes back like a dog returning to its own sit. I think that's a Stuart Lee line.
So within the Camden Fringe, pairing with Edinburgh, you don't have a free everything. Minimum ticket price is £5. Good value, especially at London prices. Do you kind of see that change, or is that very much you don't think a free element would work?
No, I think the problem with free tickets is it's a bit of an unknown quantity, isn't it? If you get people to book them in advance, they're quite flaky because they haven't paid for that. So if I don't, I'll book the tickets. If I turn up, I turn up. If I don't, I don't. I also think people need to invest in the show slightly, even if it is only £5. If you've gone to something and you've paid a bit of money, I think your mind is open to being entertained. If you've gone and it's free, you might be a bit like, well, come on then, entertain me. I think you need I think it's important for people to pay for arts and things.
For artists marketing their shows, is there much offline, so real world effectively, so flyering and things like that around Camden, or is it generally online?
Certainly Camden is, I think, one of the few places in London, other than the West End, where you actually can flyer, because there is enough footfall, there's enough people doing weird stuff that you can kind of get their attention if you're actually in Camden Town. But I do feel like that's really changed since we started, that flyering is much less effective than doing online campaigns. But this year we have produced a physical brochure, which we've had printed and distributed. And it'd be interesting to see if that makes a difference to ticket sales, but I suspect it won't. But I think it is a nice thing for the venues to have, and it's a nice thing for the acts to have, so that, it shows that there's something happened and they can give it to their mum. And I think, the venues in particular, last year when I was visiting venues during the Fringe, they were like, we missed the brochure. It wasn't, it's nice to be able to throw it at someone and say, this is what's happening. Have a look, see if there's something you fancy.
Yeah, it makes it real if it's a physical thing.
Yeah, I think you need to have a very good app to replace it, which is not something we have at the moment.
And sales-wise, is it generally a big rush in the day or two before an act, or is it is? I guess you nodded.
Absolutely, yeah. I sent actually all the acts a picture of last year's graph of what the sales were, and it very obviously really kicked off about 3 days before the festival started and only tailed off on the last day. But up until that, it's a very sort of slow incline, and then most of the sales are while the festival's on. So people aren't. I think certainly COVID made people less keen to book things massively in advance, because so many plans got changed. Everything was all very uncertain. So people were just like, oh, book on the day, book on the door. And maybe that was changed a bit now. People have got back into the rhythm of making plans. But yeah, we've always seen that the majority of sales are 2 to 3 days before a show happens. Obviously, that's really difficult if you're a performer, because you could be looking a week out from your show going, no one's booked, no one's going to see. And you do get the odd person going, I'm just going to cancel it, like a week before. And you think, well, that's a real shame, because you probably would have sold some tickets on the day. And we had one show actually last year who, I think they were booked in for 3 performances. One of them hadn't sold very well. So a week out, he decided to cancel that one performance. And then the others sold out. And then he ended up putting on an extra performance at the end of the festival because loads of his friends couldn't get in. And it was because they hadn't held their nerve and just sort of stuck with the original plan.
So do you think we'll have riots or train strikes this year?
Oh, a volcano.
Do you remember there was a flash flood last year, wasn't there? And someone actually couldn't get to their show because they were on the wrong side of London.
I know Richard Herring talks about his podcast Leicester Square. He's, I think, found that post-COVID there's a bit more difficulty in shifting tickets. And I think you look at the kind of the footfall at tube stations. Monday and Friday are an awful lot less than they used to be. His shows on a Monday night. I mean, do you think there'll be something similar with yours, that there'll be more difficulty certain days of the week than others?
Don't know. That's the honest answer to that one. Certainly 2 years ago, when we did the show for the first time when we did the festival for the first time post-COVID, and it only was like 3 weeks after all the restrictions had been lifted that we were definitely sure we would be able to go ahead. So it had been a bit of we were organising it all, going, this could all go to pot, this is going to end up in the bin, we're not going to be able to do it. But actually we were able to do it. And that was our busiest year in terms of audiences, I think. Is that right, Zena? You're the figures person. Because I think people were just really keen to get out and do stuff, and it had been the first time for a year and a half they'd been able to.
So do you think that people working from home means they're not out and about in London and not necessarily thinking, I've just come out of the office, I'll just go and see a Fringe show before I go home?
Yeah, I think there'll definitely be an element of that. Me personally, as an example, if I was working in London, you might go after work, whereas where I am now, I'm 40 minutes into Euston, but 15 quid for the train. It's an hour and a half each way. And you can it makes it's an extra barrier, as an example. Whereas, like you said, if you were just working in an office on the Monday evening, shows at 7, go see the show and then go home, and so your train fare's already paid for, so it's already done. So it's a different kind of mindset effectively. You're having to sell not just the show but the whole kind of thing of going into London and everything else.
But there's still plenty of people who work in London, I think. I think it's easy as someone who works in an office to think that, or works from home, thinks that loads of people are doing hybrid working, but obviously there's thousands of professions that can't possibly work from home. They're working in shops, they're working in hospitals, they're cleaning, they're presenting a radio show or whatever. They still have to go into the city and move around, they're still available to see a Fringe show.
Do you work with the artist on ticket pricing and pricing levels? Do you have kind of suggested areas, or is that just all up to them?
Well, we have sort of suggested levels, but we do encourage them to, rather than pluck a figure out of thin air, to try and actually make a budget for their show and work out what they need to charge in order to make it into a successful production. Whether they all do that or not, whether they...
I'm going to say they don't.
I don't. I think a few of them might do that, but I suspect not. But we do try, and we say sort of between £5 and £20, depending on obviously the cost of your venue, how many people are in the show, what sort of quality you're providing.
So yeah, we have like a 2-hour opera on upstairs at the Gatehouse. That's worth £20 of anybody's money, I'm sure. It's an opera. It's got a big cast. It's it's a long show. A half an hour spoken word show in a pub back room is probably only worth £5. But you've got to kind of be realistic.
I think that it'd be interesting to see with the cost of living, cost of going out for a drink, things like that has gone quite crazy. So it'd be interesting to see how that affects things, really.
You've got your podcast of your own, Camden Fringe podcast, where you've been talking to both acts and people in the kind of marketing, the PR side. How have you found the experience of doing the podcast and speaking to people about the different areas?
Well, we've had a lovely time. We know lots of people from years and years of doing fringy stuff that we've been able to con into coming and doing it. And for us, it was a way of trying to make the boring information about putting on a fringe show a bit more digestible, because we provide written guides for people and we were finding people weren't reading it. So we thought we'd put it in a podcast form. Don't just take our word for it. Take some expert advice on it. And it's just given us another way for people to ignore us, really. But, we're trying to help the shows. Yeah.
It's something, when it's there, it's not just for this year. It's the kind of thing that people can go back to again and again and take things from it.
Yeah, it's a resource.
From your chats, is there any particular bit of advice that you think has stood out, or think, oh yeah, that's a really good thing, I didn't really think of that, or something that was a bit different?
I mean, we really like the advice that reinforces everything we already thought. But I think I enjoyed we spoke to Stephen Smith, who was one of the acts who performed last year, and he was talking about doing social media, and he was saying you have to be relentless but never repetitive. I think that's what he said, something like that. But he was just talking about how you have to keep putting content out there, but you need to make it a bit different, which is good. It was really useful talking to Rob from Everything Theatre, because he is a press person. He's the person who's receiving press releases and press requests. And so that I felt was really useful. He was sort of saying, actually do send follow-up emails, because I'm a bit like, don't harass the press. But he was a bit like, you kind of do have to harass us a bit. So that was useful advice, I think.
I thought Andrew Collier, when he talked about, when people, it's just such a simple thing, but people set up social media accounts for their particular show that they're doing. And he was saying, don't do that. If you're going to set it up for your in your name company, or in your company's name, so that you're building on it. It's something you can build year on year, and then people can find you again next year, rather than just starting from scratch. Because lots of people will make up a play called like the Michelle Sexy Show, and she's got Twitter thing, and it's the Sexy Michelle at hashtag sexymichelle.com. You do have that account, and she's only got 13 followers.
Yeah, don't have disposable accounts. Try and have one that you build on and you put all your heart and soul into.
Thanks for listening. In the show notes, there's more details about the festival, which runs from 31st of July to the 27th of August in Camden and beyond, as well as details of their podcast. If you enjoyed this, check out our other episodes where we speak to a number of performers about their experiences at festivals, as well as with creatives in other industries about making creativity pay.